There's a lot of buzz over KTM's recent announcement with the release of the updated 890 Adventure, Adventure R, and Adventure R Rally for 2021. Here's what you need to know, and we'll talk through whether you might want to consider upgrading if you already have a 790 from 2019 or 2020. We'll also talk about if you're in the market for a mid-size adventure bike, if this is something that should be at the top of your list. KTM is known for updating their bikes all the time. Their off-road bikes get updates every few years to keep them competitive. The benefit is that riders get to enjoy the latest tech, but the downside is you might feel left out when you just bought a new bike and they update it the next month. Not that I'm bitter or anything. This is familiar to any of you who had the 950 Adventure. They updated that to the 990 a few years later. But overall, KTM just likes to change models a lot. You had the 1190 and then the 1090, and then the 1290, and then the 790. So you get the idea. So let's walk through all the updates to the 890 Adventure, and you can decide for yourself whether this is a worthwhile upgrade for you. Let's start with the elephant in the room, which is the weight. So I researched the weight the best that I could, and what I came up with was the dry weight difference. So the old 790 Adventure R was 416 pounds or 189 kilograms dry. The new 890 Adventure, from the best that I can research and find out on the web, is 432 pounds dry or 195 kilograms. So this is a weight gain of 15 pounds or about 7 kilograms. The weight gain is unfortunate, but when I read you the list of upgrades, you're going to see why it gained weight. And at the end of the video, we'll talk about whether this weight is really a problem or if it's worth it. Let's talk about the engine. The engine is really the biggest and most noticeable update to the bike. So they added 90 cc more capacity. It has 9 foot-pounds more torque, or about 12 newton meters more. So it goes up from 65 foot-pounds to 74 foot-pounds of torque. For horsepower, it gains around 10 horsepower or 7.5 kilowatt, and it goes from 95 to 105 horsepower. Now, while the bike really doesn't need more horsepower, I suppose there's nothing wrong with it at the end of the day. But I think more important than the horsepower are some of the things I want to talk about now. So they added 20% more rotating mass to the engine. What does that mean for you as a rider? Well, what it means is that you're less likely to stall the bike at low RPM. Also, it's going to run smoother and better and pull stronger from those low RPM. So it's going to be more rideable in most riding situations. We all know one of the big reasons KTM went to the 890 was they needed a bigger engine to be competitive in all the bikes that they put this engine in, but they also needed to meet the Euro 5 emissions requirements. So they also upgraded the clutch. They claim to have put in a stronger clutch, and I'm happy to hear this because there have been quite a few reports on Adventure Rider of people with failed clutches on the 2019 and 2020 790 Adventures. KTM claims to have upgraded the quick shifter as well. However, it's still an added option that you have to pay more for, which if you watch my 790 reviews and videos that I did on the 790, I think it's kind of annoying that they make you pay extra for it. It's probably good that they upgraded it because some riders have reported issues with theirs, although mine has been perfect. The transmission. So KTM claims to have updated the shifting and the transmission. So perhaps you're going to have a smoother transmission or better durability. It's too early in the 790's run to really know if the transmission has any faults or not, but it can't hurt that they made an upgrade there. So the suspension travel and overall specifications remain the same. However, what they do list on their website is that they change the suspension settings. That's all the KTM says. So what I read into that is they must have messed with the damping settings of the shim stack and the suspension. Now hopefully they made it perform better and made it more plush on those hard hits. Because as I've reported in my 790 videos, the suspension, especially the back shock, is actually really harsh, and I'm not very happy with it at all. On the chassis, they added a lighter subframe, and they also changed something in the steering tube, I think, and went to aluminum there. The brakes. So they claim to have reworked the brakes front and back. All it says is that they've reworked them. We don't really know what that means. We know that the brakes are the same size. They should be about the same power. But since some riders have reported durability issues with their brakes on the forums, this is probably a good thing. Now you might be thinking as we're going through this sounds like a lot of upgrades. Why does the 790 had so many problems? Well, it's not that the 790 really has a lot of problems, but this is just how KTM is as a company. They'll release a bike like they did the 790 to get it out to riders as soon as they can. Any of you who bought 950 Adventures back in the day realize the same thing. The early 950s Adventures had a lot of issues. They had water pumps that failed. They had all sorts of problems, and over the years they kept changing things and making the bike better. So going back to the upgrades on the 890, they've changed the electronics just a little bit. So they said that they've changed the algorithm for the traction control. So that must mean to me that you're probably going to have the same settings for the traction control, which is 1 through 9, but maybe they've adjusted that a little bit. And we don't know how, but hopefully they did it in a good way. Now let's talk about cruise control. I've read some things out there that say cruise control is now standard, and that's actually not really true. At least that's only partially true. So what KTM has done, as far as I can tell, is they've added the cruise control handlebar switch as standard. So you don't have to purchase the switch as an additional cost, but if you want cruise control on your bike, whether you're getting the R model or the regular model, you're still going to have to pay to add the cruise control functionality, which is, to me, kind of a bummer that they make you pay extra when the bike already has a switch on it. Let's talk about the price. This is another elephant in the room. Now, I found some leaked information on the pricing online. I'm not sure how accurate it is, but it seems pretty reasonable to me. And the prices I found was that it's a price increase of $500 on both models. So in particular, the 790 Adventure R that I was looking at went from $13,699 US to $14,299 US. Now, my personal opinion on this, for a price jump of $500 and all the upgrades that we just went through, from the larger, torquier, more powerful engine that's going to run better at low RPMs, to change suspension settings, to rework brakes, and all the things that we've gone through, I think this is actually quite a bargain. The other thing that might seem like a small detail that you have to consider is that now they're giving you the cruise control switch cluster. And as I recall, that was at least a couple $100 to buy that on my bike. So really, if you factor that in, the price really only went up a few $100 if you were going to add cruise control anyway. And when you factor in all the upgrades for $300, that seems like a pretty darn good deal to me. And I think it's going to be a good thing for riders. Now, there's a few things I wish they would have addressed that they haven't. I know the world isn't perfect and we don't always get what we want, but many of us who ride the 790 Adventure have a complaint about wind buffeting. The wind buffeting is really, really bad on the 790 Adventure. It just is. For most riders, to report issues with it means that it's something that they need to look at in the future. KTM is really not a company oriented toward touring or comfort, and that's just a fact. They're more oriented to racing and riding hard off-road, which is fine, but some of us like to take long trips on our bike. So I wish they would have done something to the fairing of the windshield. I also wish they would have given us a better skid plate. When you watch these videos of the KTM tearing around off-road, you can still see that the bike, even the rally model, which costs something like $20,000 US, still has the super thin little pizza plate, skid plate underneath it. Now, most of us who are riding our 790s off-road have already upgraded this item at a cost of, at least a few $100s. So I wish they would make that a little bit stronger. Also, I wish that KTM would just make the quick shifter and the cruise control standard and not have to pay extra for it. It's not that the bike is a bad deal, it's still a good price even when you add those things to it, but it just kind of sucks to go in to buy it and then have to shell out more money to get features that really should just come stock on the bike. So in conclusion, my opinion is that all the changes that they've made represent really useful upgrades that should make the bike more enjoyable for most riders. Yes, the weight gain is an unfortunate side effect of putting in a larger engine and having to meet the Euro 5 emissions. However, while 15 pounds is not a good thing, and you might notice it, I think it's probably a worthwhile trade-off for all the upgrades that we've talked about. Plus, how many of us could probably stand to lose 15 pounds off our stomach anyway? So for current 790 owners, these really don't represent compelling reasons to take a bath on selling yours and buying a new one. But if you are in the market for a midsize adventure bike and you don't currently have a 790, I'd recommend getting the 890. However, if you want to score a deal on a 790, you're going to be happy with that too. As for me, will I upgrade my 790 Adventure R and get the 890? Well, I think I have something else in mind if I'm going to spend my hard-earned cash to switch bikes. Thanks for your support. Please give the video a thumbs up. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and we'll see you on the next video. Ride safe out there.